Rain hammered against the towering glass facade of Hanul Tower, Seoul's most prestigious corporate skyscraper. Inside the marble lobby, expensive perfume mingled with the scent of fresh espresso. Executives in tailored suits moved with practiced importance. Then she walked in. Zara stepped through the revolving doors, her white silk blouse pristine, her leather portfolio pressed against her chest. She was there for the meeting that would change her career forever. She never made it to the elevator. A senior executive blocked her path. His smile held no warmth. Before she could speak, hot coffee exploded across her chest, soaking through silk, destroying months of preparation. The lobby fell silent. Nobody moved. Nobody helped. The executive's laughter echoed off marble walls. Then the elevator doors opened. A tall Korean man stepped out. His cold gaze swept the scene. Without a single word, he ended a career. Without raising his voice, he changed her life forever. Sometimes, one act of cruelty changes every life forever. Please like, share and subscribe. The coffee was still burning through her blouse when Zara heard the laughter. It started low, almost disbelieving. Then it grew. Director Hwang Min-jun stood before her, the empty ceramic cup still dangling from his fingers. His expensive watch caught the lobby chandelier light as he tilted his head, studying his handiwork with evident satisfaction. "Oh dear," he said, his voice carrying across the silent lobby. "How terribly clumsy of me." Zara's hands trembled as she looked down at herself. The white silk was ruined. Brown liquid spread across the fabric like a wound, seeping into the important documents she had spent 3 weeks preparing. The international merger proposal. The translation certificates. Her professional credentials. Everything was destroyed. "Perhaps," Director Hwang continued, stepping closer, "you should learn to watch where you're going. This lobby is for executives, not delivery girls." Someone behind him snickered. Zara lifted her gaze slowly. Her soft brown eyes met his cold stare without flinching. "I have an appointment," she said quietly, "with the International Relations Department." Director Hwang's smile widened. He was in his mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of arrogance that came from decades of unchecked power. His position as Senior Director of Corporate Affairs made him untouchable. Or so he believed. An appointment? He laughed again, looking around at the gathered crowd for validation. Several junior executives smiled nervously. Dressed like that? Carrying papers like some university intern? He reached out and flicked the edge of her ruined portfolio. "Let me guess. You're here to clean something. Or perhaps deliver lunch." The words hung in the air like poison. Zara felt heat rising to her cheeks, but not from embarrassment. From anger. The kind of anger she had learned to swallow years ago. The kind that burned but never showed. She had faced worse. Much worse. Growing up without money. Working 3 jobs through university. Enduring whispered comments about her presence in spaces where people thought she didn't belong. This was just another man who saw her skin before her credentials. Another man who assumed her worth based on everything except her mind. "My name is Zara Okonkwo," she said, her voice steady despite the coffee still dripping onto the marble floor. "I'm the lead interpreter for the Park and Morrison International merger. I have a meeting with Vice President Choi in 15 minutes. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in Director Hwang's eyes. Then it disappeared. "Vice President Choi?" He scoffed. "You expect me to believe that, He stopped himself. But everyone heard what he didn't say. The silence in the lobby grew heavier. Zara's grip tightened on her ruined portfolio. She could feel dozens of eyes watching her. Receptionists frozen behind their desks. Security guards looking anywhere except at the scene unfolding before them. Junior executives pretending to check their phones while recording everything. Nobody intervened. Nobody helped. Because Director Hwang was powerful. And she was nobody. Later that afternoon, Zara would remember the exact moment the atmosphere changed. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling. The lobby's ambient noise, clicking heels, murmured conversations, the gentle hum of the espresso machine, simply stopped. As if someone had pressed pause on reality itself. Then she heard the elevator. The soft chime echoed across the marble. Director Hwang heard it too. She watched his confident expression flicker. Just slightly. Like a candle flame touched by an unexpected wind. The doors slid open. And he stepped out. Kang Jun moved through the world like he owned it. Because he did. At 32 he controlled Hanul Group, one of Korea's most powerful investment corporations. His signature was worth billions. His decisions shaped markets. His approval could build empires. His disapproval could destroy them. But that was only his public face. In the shadows of Seoul's glittering corporate world, another name commanded even greater fear. A name whispered in back rooms and underground chambers. A name that made powerful men lose their appetites. The Silent Chairman. He had not earned that name through violence. He had earned it through something far more terrifying. Control. Absolute, unshakable control. Today, Kang Jun wore a black tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His black dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing just a hint of dark ink along the side of his neck. A luxury watch circled his wrist, understated, elegant, worth a fortune. His face revealed nothing. Sharp jawline. High cheekbones. Eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He was devastatingly handsome in the way that made people uncomfortable. The kind of handsome that felt dangerous. Because it was. The elevator doors had barely finished opening when the temperature in the lobby dropped. Kang Jun's gaze swept the scene before him with unhurried precision. He took in the ruined documents scattered across the marble. The coffee still dripping from the woman's blouse. The expensive cup in Director Huang's hand. The crowd of people who had done nothing. His expression didn't change. But those who knew him well, and there were very few, would have recognized the slight tension in his jaw. The almost imperceptible narrowing of his eyes. Signs that someone was about to suffer. Director Huang. His voice was quiet. Almost soft. It shouldn't have carried across the vast lobby. It did. Director Huang turned, and Zara watched the color drain from his face in real time. It was fascinating in a horrifying way. Like watching a man realize he had stepped off a cliff. Chairman Kang. The words came out strangled. I didn't realize you were in the building today. Kang Jun said nothing. He simply stood there. Waiting. The silence stretched. 1 second. 2. 5. Director Huang began to sweat. There's been a small accident, he said, gesturing vaguely toward Zara. This woman, she walked into me and... Did she? 2 words. That was all Kang Jun said. But they landed like a death sentence. Director Huang's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No sound came out. Kang Jun's gaze shifted. For the first time he looked directly at Zara. Hours later she would try to describe what happened in that moment. She would fail. His eyes met hers across 15 feet of marble floor, and something in her chest simply stopped. It wasn't attraction, not exactly. It was recognition. The kind of recognition that made no logical sense. As if some part of her had been waiting. For him. His expression remained unreadable. But she saw something flicker in those dark depths. Something that looked almost like surprise. The moment lasted perhaps 2 seconds. It felt like an eternity. Then Kang Jun turned back to Director Huang. Your office, he said quietly. Now. The words held no inflection. No anger. No threat. They didn't need to. Director Huang looked like a man who had just been told the exact date of his death. His face had gone from pale to gray. His hands shook slightly as he set down the coffee cup. Chairman Kang, if I could just explain. I wasn't asking. Kang Jun turned and walked toward the executive elevator bank. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Director Huang followed like a condemned man walking to his execution. The lobby remained frozen for several heartbeats after they disappeared. Then, slowly, reality resumed. People began moving again. Murmuring. Pretending they hadn't just witnessed something extraordinary. A junior executive hurried over with napkins. A receptionist appeared with fresh documents. Someone else offered to call for a new blouse from the company store. Suddenly, everyone wanted to help. But Zara barely noticed. She stood motionless in the center of the lobby, coffee still dripping onto marble, her ruined portfolio clutched against her chest. Staring at the elevator doors that had just closed. Wondering who that man was. And why some part of her already knew the answer. Director Huang's office occupied a corner of the 43rd floor. It was impressive by any standard. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Italian leather furniture. Art pieces worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. All of it meant nothing to the man who now stood at the windows, his back to the room, his hands clasped behind him. Kang Jun had not spoken since entering the office. 23 minutes had passed. Director Huang sat at his own desk, feeling like an intruder in his own space. Sweat had soaked through his expensive shirt. His carefully maintained composure had crumbled completely. Chairman Kang, he finally managed, his voice cracking. Please. If I've done something wrong. The woman in the lobby. Kang Jun's voice cut through the room like a blade. Yes. Who is she? Director Huang's mind raced. Why did the chairman care about some nobody interpreter? What was her connection to him? Was she someone important? Had he made a terrible mistake? I believe she claimed to be an interpreter. For the Park and Morrison merger. Obviously she was lying. She wasn't. 3 words. Director Hwang felt his stomach drop. I'm sorry? Kang Jun finally turned from the window. The afternoon light silhouetted his figure, casting his face in shadow. Only his eyes were visible, cold, dark, merciless. Zara Okonkwo, he said softly. Graduate of Seoul National University. Fluent in 7 languages. Lead interpreter for the most significant international merger this company has handled in 3 years. He took a step forward. The merger I personally negotiated. Director Hwang stopped breathing. The interpreter I personally approved. Another step. The professional you just publicly humiliated in my lobby. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Chairman Kang. Director Hwang rose from his chair, hands raised in desperate supplication. I had no idea. If I had known she was connected to you. Connected to me? Something in Kang Jun's voice made the older man freeze. She isn't connected to me, Director Hwang. I've never met her. I don't know her. He moved closer, slowly, deliberately, like a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. Which makes what you did even more interesting. Director Hwang backed against his desk. I don't understand. You saw a woman alone. A woman with no power. No protection. No one to defend her. Kang Jun's voice remained soft. Almost gentle. And you decided to destroy her. For your own entertainment. It was just, I wasn't thinking. No. You were thinking perfectly clearly. Kang Jun reached the desk. He placed both hands on its surface, leaning forward until his face was inches from Director Hwang's. You were thinking that she was beneath you. That she didn't matter. That no one would care what you did to her. His dark eyes held nothing but cold fire. You were wrong. Across the city, Zara sat in a borrowed conference room wearing a borrowed blouse. The merger meeting had been postponed. Vice President Choi had been apologetic, genuinely so, offering her fresh documents, fresh coffee, whatever she needed. But Zara couldn't focus. She kept replaying the moment in the lobby. The elevator doors opening. The man stepping out. His eyes meeting hers across that vast marble space. Who was he? She knew logically that she had just met Chairman Kang Jun. The Kang Jun. The man whose signature appeared on every major decision this corporation made. The man who had single-handedly transformed Hanul Group from a regional investment firm into a global powerhouse. But knowing something and understanding something were different things. What she understood was this. Something had happened in that moment. Something she couldn't name. Something that frightened her. Meanwhile, on the 43rd floor, Director Hwang's world was ending. Effective immediately, Kang Jun said, straightening from the desk. You are terminated. What? The word came out as a whisper. You can't. I've been with this company for 23 years. 23 years, Kang Jun repeated. And in all that time, no one ever taught you the difference between power and cruelty. He walked toward the door. Your severance will reflect your tenure. Nothing more. Nothing less. You will not contest this decision. You will not speak to the press. You will not seek employment at any company within my network. He paused with his hand on the door handle. If you attempt any of these things, I will respond accordingly. Director Hwang sank into his chair. Please, he whispered. Please, Chairman Kang. My career, my family. Perhaps you should have thought of them before you ruined a woman's documents for your own amusement. The door opened. Clear your desk by 5 o'clock. Security will escort you out. Kang Jun left without looking back. In the corridor, his secretary was waiting. Park Ji-hyun had worked for him for 6 years. She knew better than to ask questions. The interpreter, Kang Jun said as he walked toward his private elevator. Zara Okonkwo. I want her file on my desk within the hour. Yes, Chairman. And Park. She looked up. Ensure she has everything she needs for the merger meetings tomorrow. Transportation. Accommodation if required. Whatever it takes. Ji-hyun nodded, making notes. May I ask, sir, why the personal interest? Kang Jun stopped at the elevator. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly, I don't know yet. The doors opened. He stepped inside. And disappeared. Later that evening, Kang Jun sat alone in his private office. The space occupied the entire top floor of Hanul Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seoul at night, a tapestry of light stretching to the horizon. The Han River glittered in the distance like a ribbon of stars. But Kang Jun wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at a file. Zara Okonkwo's file. It sat open on his desk, illuminated by the soft glow of his desk lamp. Personnel photo. Educational history. Work experience. Performance reviews. He had read it 3 times. Each time something in his chest tightened. She was remarkable. That much was clear from the documents. Graduated top of her class from Seoul National University's linguistics program. Certified interpreter in 7 languages. Praised by every client who had ever worked with her. But that wasn't what caught his attention. It was the gaps in her story. The file contained no family contacts. No emergency numbers. No record of anyone who might be looking out for her. She was completely alone. Just as he had been. What? Kang Jun closed his eyes. He hadn't thought about the past in years. Hadn't allowed himself to remember the young man he'd been before everything changed. Before betrayal taught him that trust was weakness. Before he learned that power was the only reliable form of protection. But something about this woman, something about the way she had stood in that lobby, coffee dripping down her blouse, her dignity intact despite everything, had cracked something open inside him. Something he thought he'd buried forever. His phone buzzed. A message from his head of security. Director Huang has left the building. No incidents. Currently being monitored per standard protocol. Kang Jun set the phone aside without responding. He turned back to the file. To her photograph. She was beautiful. Not in the obvious, polished way of the women who often surrounded him at corporate functions. Her beauty was quieter. Softer. The kind that crept up on you slowly and then refused to leave. Soft brown eyes that seemed to hold entire stories. Graceful bone structure that spoke of strength rather than fragility. Natural elegance that no amount of money could purchase. He found himself wondering what she was doing right now. Whether she had gone home to cry. Whether anyone was there to comfort her. The thought bothered him more than it should. Hours later, across the city, Zara sat on the floor of her small apartment. The space was modest but meticulously maintained. Second-hand furniture arranged with care. Books stacked neatly on handmade shelves. Plants thriving on the windowsill despite limited sunlight. It wasn't much. But it was hers. She had earned every inch of it. The ruined blouse lay in a heap by the door. She couldn't bring herself to throw it away yet. It had cost her a week's worth of grocery money, purchased specifically for the merger meetings. Now it was garbage. Like the documents she had spent 3 weeks preparing. Like her confidence. Like the carefully constructed armor she wore every day to survive in a world that didn't want her to exist. Zara pulled her knees to her chest. She hadn't cried in the lobby. She hadn't cried in the borrowed conference room. She hadn't cried in the taxi on the way home. But now, alone in the darkness of her apartment, she felt the tears building behind her eyes like a storm waiting to break. Not because of the coffee. Not because of the ruined documents. Because of the way Director Huang had looked at her. Like she was nothing. Like she was less than nothing. Like her presence in that beautiful lobby was an offense against nature itself. She had seen that look before. So many times. In so many places. From so many people who decided her worth based on everything except who she actually was. The tears finally fell. Silent. Burning. Endless. She didn't try to stop them. Sometimes the only way forward was through. Several days later, Zara returned to Hanul Tower. She didn't want to. Every instinct screamed at her to run. To find another job. Another path. Another life where she didn't have to walk through those marble doors and face the memory of her humiliation. But she couldn't afford to quit. The merger contract was the most significant job of her career. The payment would cover her rent for 6 months. The connections would open doors she desperately needed. So she straightened her spine. She squared her shoulders. And she walked through the revolving doors. The lobby looked exactly the same. Marble floors gleaming. Crystal chandeliers sparkling. Executives moving with self-important purpose. But something had changed. Zara felt it the moment she stepped inside. Eyes turned toward her. Not with mockery this time. With something that looked almost like respect? The receptionist practically scrambled over her desk to greet her. Miss Okonkwo, we've been expecting you. Please, this way, your conference room has been prepared. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? Zara blinked. Water would be fine. Thank you. Of course. Right away. The woman disappeared at almost superhuman speed. Zara stood frozen, confused. What was happening? Meanwhile, 47 floors above, Kang Jun watched through the security feed. His office contained a wall of monitors showing every corner of his empire. He rarely used them personally, that was what his security team was for. But today he had found himself drawn to the lobby feed. Specifically, to the woman currently standing in its center, looking bewildered by the sudden abundance of courtesy. He watched her accept a glass of water from the overeager receptionist. He watched her straighten her already perfect posture. He watched her walk toward the elevators with quiet determination. Something in his chest shifted. It felt almost like anticipation. He hadn't felt that in a very long time. His phone buzzed. A message from his driver. Arriving in 20 minutes for the Park and Morrison preliminary. The meeting. Right. The same meeting that Zara Okonkwo would be interpreting. Kang Jun looked at his reflection in the dark monitor screen. His expression revealed nothing. But inside something was changing. Something he hadn't authorized. Something that might be very, very dangerous. The conference room on the 44th floor was designed to intimidate. 30-foot ceilings. A table carved from a single piece of Italian marble. Chairs that cost more than most people's cars. One entire wall was glass, offering a view of Seoul that made visitors feel simultaneously privileged and small. Zara had interpreted in rooms like this before, but never one this overwhelming. She sat at the end of the table, her translation equipment arranged precisely before her. New documents, pristine and professional, sat in neat stacks. The company had replaced everything she'd lost and then some. She tried not to think about why. Around her, executives filed in. Vice President Choi nodded politely as he took his seat. Representatives from the Morrison Corporation arrived next, their American confidence filling the room with loud greetings and firmer than necessary handshakes. The meeting was scheduled to begin at 2 o'clock. At 1:58, the energy in the room shifted. Conversations trailed off. Movements became more careful. Everyone turned toward the door. Kang Jun entered. The following morning, Zara would try to analyze what happened next. She would fail. Because what happened defied analysis. He walked into the room and everything else simply stopped mattering. Not because he demanded attention. He didn't seem to demand anything at all. But because his presence was so absolute, so complete, that it left no space for anything else. He wore another perfectly tailored black suit. Another black dress shirt. Another luxury watch catching the light with each movement. But what Zara noticed, what she couldn't stop noticing, was the ink visible at his collar. Dark lines disappearing beneath expensive fabric. Suggesting a pattern that continued far beyond what his clothing revealed. Elaborate. Extensive. Deliberately hidden. Her translator's mind cataloged the detail automatically. Her woman's mind wondered what it meant. Then his gaze swept the room and landed on her. Across the city, in an underground chamber beneath an unremarkable building in Gangnam, men in expensive suits were discussing death. Not metaphorically. Literally. The chamber was known only to a select few. Its walls were lined with soundproofing. Its security systems were worth more than most businesses. Its occupants answered to one man and one man only. The silent chairman. Tonight, however, the chairman was not present. His second-in-command, a sharp-featured man named Lee Young-ho, stood at the head of the table. The shipment arrives Thursday, he said, pulling up images on the hidden screen. Port of Busan. Standard protocols. Around the table men nodded. Any issues with the authorities? None. Our contacts in customs have been reminded of our arrangement. More nods. What about the prosecutor's office? I heard there's a new investigator causing problems. Young-ho's expression darkened. Prosecutor Kim. Yes. He's become ambitious. Should we handle it? Not yet. The chairman wants to observe. See how far the man is willing to go. Silence fell over the room. Even here, in the inner sanctum of one of Seoul's most powerful criminal organizations, the chairman's word was absolute. Is there any other business? One of the younger men, a lieutenant named Seo Min-ki, spoke up. I heard an interesting rumor today. Oh. About the chairman. Apparently he fired Director Huang, the senior director. On the spot. In front of the entire executive floor. Murmurs rippled around the table. Huang's been with the company for decades, someone muttered. What did he do? That's the interesting part. Min-ki leaned forward. Apparently he insulted some woman in the lobby. A nobody. Some interpreter. Silence. And the chairman fired him for that? Ended his entire career. 23 years, gone in 20 minutes. The men exchanged glances. Young-ho's expression remained unreadable. The chairman's business is his own, he said carefully. We don't question. We don't speculate. We serve. Of course. But nothing. Young-ho's voice hardened. Whatever the chairman's interest in this woman, it is not our concern. Understood. Nods around the table. But the questions lingered. Who was this woman who had caught the silent chairman's attention? And what would it cost her when the underworld found out? Meanwhile, in the conference room at Hanul Tower, Zara was drowning. Not literally, but close enough. The merger negotiations had begun, and she was doing her job exactly as she had done it hundreds of times before. Translating Korean to English, English to Korean, technical terminology, legal concepts, cultural nuances that could make or break a billion-dollar deal. She was good at her job. Excellent, in fact. But something was wrong. Every time she looked up from her notes, he was watching her. Kongjun. His gaze never wavered, never shifted, never showed a hint of what he was thinking. He simply observed. Like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Like she was a problem he hadn't anticipated. Like she was something he wanted. That last thought made her stumble over a translation. Just slightly. Just enough for the Morrison executives to notice. I apologize, she said smoothly, recovering. Could you repeat the last clause regarding intellectual property provisions? The American nodded, but his expression was curious. Zara forced herself to focus. To ignore the heat of those dark eyes watching her every move. To pretend her heart wasn't beating faster than it should. She survived the meeting. Barely. When it ended 3 hours later, she gathered her materials with trembling hands, desperate to escape before. Miss Okonkwo. His voice stopped her in her tracks. Everyone else had left. Zara hadn't noticed. She'd been so focused on organizing her papers, on looking composed, on not meeting his eyes, that she'd missed the exodus entirely. Now she stood alone in the conference room with Kongjun. The man who had ended a career with 3 words. The man whose gaze she couldn't seem to escape. Chairman Kong, she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. Was there something about the translation? The translation was flawless. His voice was quiet, measured, impossible to read. Then, how can I help you? For a long moment he didn't respond. He simply stood there, hands in his pockets, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Then he moved. 1 step, 2, 3, until he was close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle and devastatingly masculine. I have a question for you, Miss Okonkwo. She swallowed. Yes. In the lobby. When Director Huang humiliated you. His dark eyes searched her face. What were you thinking? The question caught her off guard. Of all the things she'd expected him to ask, this wasn't it. I don't understand. You stood there. Coffee dripping down your blouse. Documents ruined. An entire lobby watching your degradation. His voice remained soft, but something dangerous lurked beneath the surface. And you didn't cry. You didn't scream. You didn't even look away. He tilted his head slightly. What were you thinking in that moment? Zara's heart pounded against her ribs. No one had ever asked her that. No one had ever cared. I was thinking, she said slowly, that I've survived worse. Something flickered in his expression. And I was thinking, she continued, her voice gaining strength, that I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of breaking me. Silence. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, good. He turned and walked toward the door. Zara stood frozen, confused, overwhelmed. Chairman Kong. He paused without turning around. Yes. Why do you care? The question hung in the air. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then over his shoulder, I don't know yet. He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Zara sank into the nearest chair. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. And something inside her, something she'd kept locked away for years, was beginning to stir. Several days later things began to change. Small things at first. Zara noticed that people treated her differently at Hanul Tower. The receptionist who had scrambled to help her that first day continued to offer excessive courtesy. Junior executives who had witnessed her humiliation now greeted her with respectful nods. Even the security guards seemed more attentive when she passed. It took her a week to realize why. Rumor had spread. Not about Director Huang's termination, that was already common knowledge. About why he had been terminated. About who had witnessed Zara's humiliation. About the way Chairman Kong had looked at her in the lobby. They're calling you the chairman's woman, Vice President Choi said one afternoon, looking uncomfortable. I thought you should know. Zara nearly dropped her coffee. Excuse me? It's just gossip. Meaningless chatter from people with too much time and too little discretion. He sighed. But I wanted you to be aware. In case anyone approaches you. Approaches me? Asking questions. Trying to use you to get close to the chairman. That sort of thing. Zara stared at him. But I'm not, I've barely spoken to the man. I know. Vice President Choi looked tired. But in Chairman Kang's world, perception often matters more than reality. And right now, the perception is that you have his attention. He paused. In 20 years at this company, I've never seen him pay attention to anyone like this. The words settled over Zara like a weight. She didn't know how to carry them. Across the city in his private office, Kang Jun was asking himself the same question. Why did he care? The file sat open on his desk again. He'd memorized every word by now. Every detail of her remarkable journey from nowhere to somewhere. Every hint of the struggles she'd overcome. But that wasn't what drew him. What drew him was the moment in the conference room. When she'd looked at him without fear. When she'd answered his question with perfect honesty. When she'd said, I've survived worse, and he'd believed her. There was something in her eyes that recognized something in his. Darkness. Pain. Survival. The knowledge of what it meant to stand alone against the world. His phone buzzed. A message from Young-ho. The prosecutor is moving faster than expected. He subpoenaed records from 3 of our subsidiary companies. We may need to take action. Kang Jun set the phone aside. His 2 worlds were converging. The public face he wore like armor. The shadow empire he commanded with an iron fist. And somewhere in the middle, a woman who didn't belong in either. A woman he couldn't stop thinking about. A woman who might be very, very dangerous. Not to his empire. To something far more important. His heart. 2 weeks after the coffee incident, Zara was summoned to the chairman's office. She tried to refuse. I'm sorry, but I have preparations for tomorrow's session, she told the assistant who delivered the message. Perhaps we could reschedule. Miss Okonkwo. The assistant's expression was sympathetic but firm. No one refuses the chairman. Which was how Zara found herself stepping out of the elevator on the 47th floor, her heart pounding, her professional smile firmly in place. The reception area was empty. The space was vast and cold, all clean lines and expensive minimalism. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Seoul that seemed impossible, like standing at the edge of the world. Miss Okonkwo. She turned. His secretary, the efficient woman she'd seen at the lobby incident, stood in a doorway. The chairman will see you now. Hours later, Zara would wonder what she expected. A traditional office, perhaps. A massive desk designed to intimidate. The trappings of corporate power arranged for maximum impact. What she found instead was unexpected. The room was enormous but somehow intimate. Books lined the walls, real books worn with use, not decorative props. A single desk sat near the windows, surprisingly modest given its owner's wealth. No family photographs. No awards. No evidence of a personal life at all. Just space. Silence. And him. Kang Jun stood at the windows, his back to her, watching the city below. The late afternoon light painted his silhouette in gold and shadow. Close the door. His voice was quiet. She obeyed. Sit. She moved to one of the chairs arranged before his desk. She waited. The silence stretched. 1 minute. 2. 3. Finally, without turning, do you know why I asked you here? Zara's mouth went dry. No. Neither do I. He turned then, and she saw something in his expression that she hadn't expected. Confusion. Kang Jun, the man who controlled billions, who commanded fear with a glance, who had ended a career with 3 words, looked genuinely, honestly confused. You're not what I expected, he said slowly. When I read your file. You read my file? The words came out sharper than she intended. Something flickered in his gaze. Surprise, perhaps. Most people didn't interrupt him. Yes. Why? Because you interested me. Simple. Direct. Impossible to argue with. I'm no one, Zara said carefully. I'm an interpreter. I translate documents. I don't interest powerful men. And yet. He moved toward his desk, lowering himself into the chair behind it. Here we are. She didn't know how to respond. So she said nothing. Kang Jun studied her for a long moment. His dark eyes moved over her face with an intensity that felt almost physical. I've been thinking about what you said, he finally offered. That you've survived worse. Zara's throat tightened. It wasn't meant as. I've survived worse too. The words hung in the air. She stared at him. This man, with his billions and his power and his perfect suits, he was telling her they were the same? Chairman Kong. You can call me June. The intimacy of it hit her like a physical blow. I don't think that would be appropriate, she said carefully. Probably not. A ghost of something that might have been a smile touched his lips. But I'd like you to anyway. Zara's heart was beating so fast she thought he must be able to hear it. Why? Because you're the first person in a very long time who has looked at me like I'm a person. Not a corporation. Not a threat. Not an opportunity. His gaze held hers. Just a person. She didn't know what to say, so she said the truth. You terrify me. His expression didn't change. Good. You should be terrified. He leaned forward. But not of me. Meanwhile, far below in the depths of Seoul, Kang Jun's enemies were gathering. Prosecutor Kim Tae-won sat in his cramped office, surrounded by stacks of files that reached almost to the ceiling. His tie was loosened. His coffee was cold. His eyes were bloodshot from 3 consecutive nights of insufficient sleep. But he was close. So close. The files before him contained evidence of financial irregularities spanning 3 years. Shell companies in Singapore. Ghost transactions in Hong Kong. Money moving through channels that shouldn't exist, toward destinations that couldn't be traced. All of it pointing to one man. Kang Jun. You're obsessed, his assistant said from the doorway. This investigation has consumed your life. This man has consumed lives. Prosecutor Kim looked up, his expression fierce. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. And no one, has ever been able to touch him. Because he's untouchable. No one is untouchable. Kim grabbed another file. Everyone has a weakness. A mistake. A moment of vulnerability. He opened the file. A photograph stared back at him. A woman. Beautiful, with soft eyes and elegant features. Zara Okonkwo. Who is this? His assistant asked. That, Kim said slowly, is Chairman Kang's new obsession. He studied the photograph for a long moment. And possibly his biggest weakness. Zara didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word of her conversation with Kang Jun. You can call me June. You're the first person in a very long time who has looked at me like a person. You terrify me. Good. You should be terrified. But not of me. What did any of it mean? Why was one of Seoul's most powerful men wasting his time on a nobody interpreter? What did he want from her? She turned these questions over and over in her mind until dawn crept through her windows. She had no answers. Only more questions. The following morning she received a delivery. The messenger arrived at 7 o'clock, before she'd even finished her coffee. He was young, nervous, clearly intimidated by whatever organization he represented. Miss Zara Okonkwo? Yes. He thrust a package into her hands. With compliments. Before she could ask from whom, he was gone. The package was small. Elegant. Wrapped in black paper with no markings. Inside she found a single item. A phone. No. Expensive. Already activated. A message glowed on the screen. For emergencies. J. Zara stared at it for a long time. Her hands were shaking. She should throw it away. She should pretend she never received it. She should extricate herself from whatever was happening before it was too late. Instead, she found herself typing a response. I don't need protection. The reply came instantly. Perhaps not. But I'd prefer to offer it anyway. What? A long pause. Then, I don't know yet. The same words he'd said before. The same impossible honesty. Zara closed her eyes. Whatever was happening, whatever the strange connection between them was becoming, she was already in too deep to walk away. Across the city, Young-ho delivered troubling news. The prosecutor has photographs, he reported, standing at attention in Kang Jun's office. Of you and the interpreter. In the conference room. At dinner. Leaving the building together. Kang Jun's expression didn't change. Source. Security breach. One of the junior guards. He's been handled. And the photographs? Still in the prosecutor's possession. We couldn't recover them without alerting him to our surveillance. Silence. He's using her, Young-ho said carefully. Kim. He thinks she's your vulnerability. He's going to come after her to get to you. Kang Jun turned toward the window. Then we have a problem. We could eliminate the threat. Permanently. No. The word was sharp. Final. Young-ho blinked. In 15 years of service, he had never seen the chairman reject that option so quickly. Sir. She's innocent. Kang Jun's voice was quiet but firm. She has nothing to do with this world. Nothing to do with what I am. If harm comes to her because of me. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Young-ho understood. The silent chairman had found something worth protecting. Something that could destroy him. What are your orders? He asked instead. Watch her. Protect her. Keep her out of Kim's reach. Kang Jun turned back to face him. And find out everything there is to know about this prosecutor's investigation. And if he moves against her? Kang Jun's eyes went cold. Then remind him why they call me the silent chairman. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. Zara found it tucked beneath her apartment door when she returned from work. Heavy cream paper. Embossed gold lettering. An event so exclusive that invitations weren't sent through normal channels. The annual Hanul Group Gala. Your presence is requested. No name on the invitation. But she knew who had sent it. Several days later, she stood before her closet in despair. The gala was in 3 hours. She had nothing to wear. Everything she owned was professional. Practical. Appropriate for an interpreter who needed to be invisible. This event required the opposite. A knock at her door made her jump. She opened it to find a woman she didn't recognize, immaculately dressed, perfectly composed, carrying a garment bag that probably cost more than Zara's rent. Miss Okonkwo? I'm from the chairman's personal styling service. I've been instructed to assist you with tonight's preparation. Zara stared. I didn't. The chairman anticipated that you might require some assistance. The woman smiled professionally. May I come in? Hours later, Zara barely recognized herself. The dress was midnight blue, floor-length, elegantly simple but clearly expensive. It made her skin glow and her eyes shine and her posture straighten with automatic confidence. Her hair had been styled into soft waves. Her makeup was minimal but perfect. She looked like she belonged. For the first time in her life, she actually looked like she belonged. The car that arrived to collect her was, predictably, a black luxury vehicle with tinted windows. The driver didn't speak. The silence felt like anticipation. When they pulled up to the venue, a historic hotel that gleamed with chandelier light, Zara's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. You'll be fine, she whispered to herself. You've faced worse. But had she? Had she ever faced anything like this? Meanwhile, inside the gala, Kang Jun was waiting. He stood near the bar, nursing a whiskey he didn't intend to drink, watching the entrance with carefully concealed anticipation. Around him, Seoul's elite circulated like expensive birds of prey. Corporate executives, politicians, celebrities, the kind of people who measured their worth in zeros and power. He knew them all. He trusted none of them. Chairman Kang. A woman approached, diamond-draped and smiling. You look distracted tonight. Business troubles? Nothing that concerns you, Mrs. Yoon? The dismissal was polite but unmistakable. She retreated with wounded dignity. Kang Jun returned his attention to the entrance. And then, she appeared. Time seemed to slow. Zara stood in the entrance of the ballroom, her midnight dress catching the chandelier light, her soft eyes scanning the crowd with visible nervousness. She was breathtaking. Not because of the dress, though it certainly helped. Not because of the styling or the makeup or any of the expensive improvements money could provide. She was breathtaking because of who she was. The way she held herself, straight-backed and dignified despite her obvious discomfort. The way she looked at the glittering crowd without envy or resentment or any of the emotions most people would feel in her position. The way she existed in a world that had tried so hard to exclude her. And refused to apologize for her presence. Kang Jun set down his untouched whiskey. He moved through the crowd without speaking to anyone. Eyes followed him. Whispers erupted in his wake. He didn't notice. He didn't care. All he saw was her. Zara watched him approach. She couldn't look away. He moved like something predatory, controlled, deliberate, utterly focused. The crowd parted before him without conscious thought, bodies instinctively responding to an authority they couldn't name. And he was coming directly toward her. Miss Okonkwo. His voice was quiet enough that only she could hear. You came. You made it difficult to refuse. Did I? There was that ghost of a smile again. The one that made her stomach flip in ways she didn't want to examine. The dress, she managed. The car. The invitation. It felt rather pointed. I wanted you here. Simple. Direct. Impossible. Why? He studied her for a long moment. May I have this dance? The question caught her off guard. Around them, couples moved across the dance floor to the soft strains of a string quartet. It was a waltz. Elegant. Traditional. The kind of dance she'd never learned because there had never been time or money for such things. I don't know how, she admitted. Then I'll teach you. Before she could protest, his hand was on her waist. His other hand took hers. And suddenly they were moving. Later that evening, everything changed. They had danced 3 songs. Each one had felt longer than the last, not because of boredom but because time seemed to stretch when they were together. Slowing down. Savoring. When the music ended, Kang Jun led her to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. Seoul sparkled below them like a blanket of stars. The night air was cool and clean, carrying away the perfume and politics of the ballroom. I should warn you, he said, not looking at her. About who I am. Zara's heart stuttered. What do you mean? The company. The power. The wealth. He turned to face her then, and something in his expression made her breath catch. That's not all of it. That's not even most of it. I don't understand. I know. His voice was quiet. That's why I'm telling you. Before it's too late. She stared at him. There's a darkness in my world, Zara. The kind that swallows people whole. The kind that doesn't care about innocence or guilt or any of the things decent people believe in. His dark eyes held hers with devastating intensity. If you stay near me, if you continue on this path, you will be touched by that darkness. You're warning me away? I'm giving you a choice. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. Walk away now and you will be safe. Continue on this path and I cannot guarantee your safety. But. His jaw tightened. But. If you walk away, he said quietly, I don't know what I'll do. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Honest. Terrifying. What are you asking me? She whispered. I'm asking you to choose. Safety or this. He didn't define what this was. He didn't need to. She felt it in every cell of her body. Zara made her choice. She didn't walk away. Instead, she reached up and placed her palm against his cheek. His skin was warm. His jaw was tense. His eyes, those cold, dark, unreadable eyes, suddenly held something that looked almost like vulnerability. I should run, she said softly. Yes. Every intelligent instinct I have is screaming at me to leave. I know. But I'm not going to. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile. But something close. Why? Because you're the first person who's ever asked me what I was thinking. Her voice was barely a whisper. Because you're the first person who's ever looked at me and seen me. His hand came up to cover hers. The touch was electric. You're making a dangerous choice, he said. I've survived worse. The words echoed between them. A promise. A warning. A beginning. What happened next should have been impossible. Kang Jun, the silent chairman, the man who trusted no one, the man who had built walls around his heart so thick that even intimacy felt like a battlefield, began to let someone in. Slowly. Carefully. But unmistakably. He started finding reasons to be near her. The merger meetings required oversight. The translation work needed review. There were documents that demanded personal attention. Excuses. All of them excuses. What he really wanted was simply to exist in her presence. To watch the way she moved through a room with quiet dignity. To hear her voice translating complex negotiations into something beautiful. To feel for the first time in years, like perhaps he wasn't entirely alone. You're being obvious, Young-ho said one afternoon, finding Kang Jun standing at his office window, watching the conference room cameras again. The men are starting to talk. Let them talk. Sir, with respect. I said let them talk. Young-ho fell silent. But his expression said everything his words didn't. This is dangerous. This will destroy you. This cannot end well. Across the city, Prosecutor Kim was closing in. The investigation had expanded. New evidence had emerged. Witnesses who had been silent for years were suddenly willing to talk, motivated by money or fear or the promise of immunity. Kim spread the files across his desk, his fingers trembling with anticipation. This is it, he said to his assistant. This is what we've been waiting for. The financial records? Everything. Kim's eyes gleamed. Every transaction. Every shell company. Every bribe and payoff and illegal transfer. It's all here. He tapped one file in particular. And this is how we bring him down. His assistant leaned forward. What is it? The woman. Zara Okonkwo. Kim's smile held no warmth. She's his weakness. She's the leverage we need. How? We make her choose. Testify against him, or face prosecution as an accessory. His assistant looked uncomfortable. She's just an interpreter. There's no evidence she's involved in anything. Then we create evidence. The words hung in the air. Dark. Damning. The beginning of something terrible. It started with a photograph. Zara found it slipped beneath her apartment door 3 weeks after the gala. A single image, printed on expensive paper, showing her and Kang Jun dancing together. Intimate. Beautiful. Incriminating. On the back, a single sentence. We know who you are. We know what he is. You're running out of time. Her hands trembled as she read it. What did it mean? Who had sent it? And what were they planning to do? Hours later, she received a summons. Not from Kang Jun. From the prosecutor's office. The message was formal. Official. Impossible to ignore. Your presence is required for questioning regarding an ongoing investigation. Please report to the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's office at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Zara stared at the summons until the words blurred. An investigation. Into what? Into whom? She already knew the answer. Meanwhile, Kang Jun was receiving news of his own. One of our people has turned, Young-ho reported, his face grim. Someone close. Someone who knows too much. Kang Jun's expression didn't change. Who? We're still working to identify them. But they've been feeding information to the prosecutor for months. What kind of information? Financial records. Meeting schedules. Contact lists. Young-ho paused. And photographs. Of you and Miss Okonkwo. Something cold settled in Kang Jun's chest. She's been summoned? This afternoon. A formal request for questioning. Silence. Then, very quietly, clear my schedule. Sir? I said clear my schedule. Kang Jun reached for his phone. If they want to use her against me, they'll find I'm not an easy target. What are you going to do? Kang Jun's eyes went cold. Whatever is necessary. The following morning, Zara sat in a sterile interview room at the prosecutor's office. Prosecutor Kim sat across from her, his expression pleasant, his eyes sharp. Thank you for coming, Miss Okonkwo. I know this must be confusing. What is this about? Just a few questions. Nothing to be concerned about. He opened a file. You're an interpreter, correct? Working on the Park and Morrison merger for Hanul Group. Yes. And you've had personal contact with Chairman Kang Jun? Zara's throat tightened. We've had professional interactions. That's all. Professional interactions. Kim produced a photograph, the same one that had been slipped under her door. This looks rather personal, wouldn't you say? She stared at the image, her hand in his, her eyes looking up at him. The moment captured forever. Miss Okonkwo, I'll be direct. Kim leaned forward. We have evidence that Kang Jun is involved in numerous illegal activities. Money laundering. Bribery. Possibly worse. We believe you may have information that could help our investigation. I don't know anything. Or you could be an accessory. His voice hardened. Working alongside him. Helping him commit crimes. Facing prosecution right beside him. Fear gripped her heart. That's not true. Then help us. Kim's eyes gleamed. Tell us what you know. Testify against him. And all of this goes away. Zara's mind raced. What should she do? What could she do? She thought of Kang Jun. Of his warnings. Of the darkness he had promised waited in his world. She thought of his hand against hers. Of his eyes finding hers across a crowded room. Of the way he made her feel seen for the first time in her life. And she made her choice. I have nothing to tell you, she said quietly. Because there's nothing to tell. Kim's pleasant expression vanished. You're making a mistake. Perhaps. She stood. But it's my mistake to make. She walked toward the door. Miss Okonkwo. She paused. This isn't over, Kim said softly. I will find the evidence I need. And when I do, neither of you will be able to escape. Zara didn't respond. She simply left. She made it 3 blocks before the car pulled up beside her. Black. Tinted windows. Familiar. The door opened. Kang Jun sat inside. Get in, he said quietly. She shouldn't. She knew she shouldn't. Everything that had just happened, the interrogation, the threats, the photographs, proved that being near him was dangerous. But when had she ever chosen safety? She got in. The car moved through Seoul in silence. Zara sat as far from him as the back seat allowed, her body rigid with tension, her mind still processing what had just happened. Finally, Kang Jun spoke. They tried to turn you against me. It wasn't a question. Yes. And? She turned to look at him. His profile was sharp against the passing city lights. Beautiful and cold and impossibly distant. I refused. Something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like pain. Why? Because I don't believe you're what they say you are. Silence. Then, very quietly, "What if you're wrong?" The question hung in the air. Heavy. Dangerous. Honest. "Are you telling me I'm wrong?" He turned to face her then, and she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Fear. Not for himself. For her. "I've done things," he said softly. "Terrible things. Things that would make you hate me if you knew. Tell me. Zara. Tell me." Her voice was fierce. "If I'm going to be destroyed for associating with you, I deserve to know what I'm being destroyed for." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached for the hem of his sleeve. Slowly. Deliberately. He rolled it up. And she saw. The tattoo was like nothing she had ever seen. It began at his wrist, dark ink swirling in elaborate patterns, coiling up his forearm like something alive. Dragons and tigers intertwined with flowers she didn't recognize, red blooms that seemed to drip with meaning. The design continued past his elbow, disappearing beneath his shirt, suggesting a canvas that covered far more than what was visible. It was beautiful, terrifying, unmistakable. "Do you know what this is?" he asked quietly. Zara's mouth was dry. "I know. It marks me as the leader of one of Seoul's most powerful criminal organizations." His voice was flat, emotionless. "The dragons represent authority. The tigers represent dominance. The flowers, spider lilies, represent death, sacrifice, and undying loyalty." She couldn't look away from the ink. "How long?" 15 years. Since I was 17. He rolled his sleeve back down. "I built this empire from nothing. I used it to gain power, and I used that power to build something legitimate." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you chose me." His dark eyes held hers with devastating intensity. "Because you refused to betray me without even knowing who I really am. And I think," his voice cracked slightly, "I think you deserve to make that choice with full knowledge." Zara felt something breaking open inside her. All the walls she had built. All the protection she had constructed around her heart. Crumbling. "So now you know," he said quietly. "The CEO is a facade. The businessman is a mask. Underneath, I am exactly what they say I am." He paused. "Do you still refuse to betray me?" She should say no. She should demand that the car stop. She should run as far and as fast as she could. Instead she moved. Across the seat. Toward him. She placed her palm against his chest, feeling his heart beat beneath layers of expensive fabric. "I don't know who you are," she said softly. "I don't know what you've done or what you're capable of. But I know how you make me feel. And I know that you're the only person who has ever made me feel like I matter." His breath caught. "Zara? Shut up." And she kissed him. The kiss was everything and nothing like she had imagined. It started gentle, a brush of lips, a question. Then his hand came up to cup her face and the question became an answer. He kissed her like she was oxygen. Like she was the only thing keeping him alive. Like he had been waiting for this moment for 15 years without knowing it. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against hers. His eyes were closed. "This is a mistake," he whispered. "I know. They'll come for you. They'll use you against me. They'll try to destroy you to destroy me. I know. I can't protect you from everything. I'm not asking you to." He opened his eyes. In their depths she saw something she had never seen before. Vulnerability. "Then what are you asking?" "Just this." She pressed her palm more firmly against his chest. "Just this." It arrived without warning. 3 days after the kiss, Zara opened her door to find her apartment surrounded by police. "Zara Okonkwo?" The lead officer held up his badge. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit financial fraud." The world tilted. "What? I haven't done anything." "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you." "This is insane." She tried to back away, but hands were already grabbing her arms. "I'm just an interpreter. I don't know anything about." "Miss Okonkwo." Prosecutor Kim stepped into view, his smile cold. "I warned you this wasn't over." They cuffed her in full view of her neighbors, dragged her down the stairs, threw her into the back of a police car, and drove her toward a nightmare. Across the city, Kang Jun received the news. He was in a meeting with foreign investors when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the message. The world stopped. "She's been arrested." Prosecutor Kim. Conspiracy charges. Everything inside him went cold. Then hot. Then cold again. "Gentlemen." His voice was perfectly calm. "I'm afraid something urgent requires my attention. My team will continue in my absence." He left without waiting for a response. In the corridor, Young-ho was already waiting. The charges are fabricated, he reported. We have confirmation from 3 sources. Kim manufactured evidence to force her cooperation. Where is she? Central District Holding. For now. For now. He's planning to transfer her. Tonight. To a facility where we have no contacts. No access. Kang Jun's jaw tightened. That won't happen. Sir, the legal route won't work fast enough. Kang Jun's eyes went cold. Activate Protocol 7. Young-ho's expression flickered. Sir, that could expose? I don't care. The words were final. Absolute. Get her out. Whatever it takes. Several hours later, the holding cell door opened. Zara looked up from the cold bench where she'd been sitting since her arrest. Her wrists were bruised from the cuffs. Her eyes were red from tears she refused to shed. A guard stood in the doorway. You're being released. She stared at him. What? All charges dropped. Insufficient evidence. The guard's expression was carefully neutral. You're free to go. Zara rose slowly, not quite believing it. In the corridor, she found Young-ho waiting. Miss Okonkwo. He bowed slightly. The chairman sends his apologies. Please come with me. Kang Jun was waiting in the car. When Zara slid into the back seat, he pulled her into his arms without speaking. She felt his heart pounding against her cheek. His breath warm against her hair. His hands trembling slightly as they held her. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. He pulled back enough to look at her face. Everything happening to you is because of me. Because I was too selfish to let you go. I didn't want to go. You should have. His voice cracked. You should have run the moment I warned you. You should have. She kissed him. Art. Fierce. When she pulled back, his eyes were wet. Stop apologizing, she said quietly. Stop trying to push me away. I chose this. I chose you. Even after everything? Even after everything. He crushed her against his chest. Outside the windows, Seoul glittered like nothing had changed. But everything had. The cliffhanger. The next 48 hours were a blur of motion and danger. Kang Jun moved Zara to a safe house outside the city. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Security cameras watched every angle. But it wasn't enough. Because the prosecutor wasn't giving up. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows of Kang Jun's organization, the traitor was still working. We've narrowed it down to 3 possibilities, Young-ho reported. But without more information. Then get more information. Sir, if we move too aggressively. I don't care about aggressive. Kang Jun's voice was cold. Someone I trusted is trying to destroy the woman I... He stopped. Young-ho waited. The woman you love? The word hung in the air. Kang Jun didn't deny it. That night, Zara found him on the safe house balcony. It was raining. Heavy, relentless rain that turned the world into sheets of gray. He stood in the downpour, his black shirt soaked through, his tattoo visible through the transparent fabric. She should have gone back inside. Instead, she walked out to join him. You'll catch pneumonia, she said. I don't get sick. Everyone gets sick. He turned to look at her. Rain dripped from his jaw. His dark eyes were haunted. Why are you here? He asked quietly. Really? After everything I've done, everything I am, why do you stay? Zara stepped closer. The rain soaked through her clothes, plastering them to her body. She didn't care. Because when I look at you, she said, I don't see a criminal. I don't see a monster. I see a man who has spent his entire life being alone. A man who has never been able to trust anyone. She reached up to cup his face. And I see a man who is trying for the first time to let someone in. And if I fail? Then we fail together. His breath caught. Zara? I love you. The words fell between them like something sacred. His eyes widened. Say that again. I love you. Tears mixed with rain on her cheeks. I don't know how it happened. I don't know when. But I do. I love you, June. For a moment he just stared at her. Then his hands came up to cradle her face. I have waited my entire life, he whispered, to hear someone say those words and mean them. And he kissed her. In the rain. In the darkness. While the world burned around them. They didn't know they were being watched. From a car parked down the street, a man with cold eyes captured the moment on camera. Got it? He said into his phone. The chairman is compromised. Excellent. Prosecutor Kim's voice was smug. Now we just need to finish what we started. And the woman? Pause. She's the key to everything. Get her alone and we'll have all the leverage we need. The man smiled. Consider it done. The betrayal came at dawn. Zara woke to silence. The safe house was empty. The guards were gone. And on the pillow beside her, a single note. If you want to see him alive, come to the coordinates below. Come alone. Tell no one. You have 1 hour. Her blood turned to ice. June. They had June. She didn't hesitate. She found clothes. The phone he had given her. She considered calling Young-ho. But the note said come alone. And she believed, truly viscerally believed, that they would kill him if she didn't. So she ran. Out of the safe house. Into the rain. Toward whatever nightmare waited at those coordinates. The coordinates led to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Seoul. Zara's heart pounded as she approached. The building loomed against the gray sky, rusted and forgotten. Water dripped through holes in the roof. Shadows gathered in corners that seemed designed for darkness. She pushed open the door. And froze. Because Kang Jun wasn't there. Instead she found Prosecutor Kim. Surrounded by men with guns. Smiling like he had already won. Miss Okonkwo. He spread his hands. Thank you for joining us. I was beginning to think you might not come. Where is he? Her voice cracked. Where is June? Oh, he's safe. For now. Kim's smile widened. But whether he stays that way depends entirely on you. What do you want? Just your testimony. A few simple statements about the chairman's activities. Nothing too complicated. And if I refuse? Kim's smile disappeared. Then your lover dies. And so do you. Zara's mind raced. Think. He'll come for you, she said. When he finds out what you've done. He won't find out in time. Kim checked his watch. By the time anyone realizes you're missing, this will all be over. You're wrong. Kim laughed. About what? Zara lifted her chin. About him. About me. About everything. She reached for her phone. What are you doing? Ending this. She pressed the emergency button June had programmed. The one that tracked her location. The one that summoned everyone in his network. The one that meant wherever she was, help would come. Kim's expression shifted. You're bluffing. Am I? For a long moment they stared at each other. Then, chaos. The warehouse doors exploded inward. Men in black poured through every entrance. Gunfire erupted. And in the center of the storm, Kang Jun appeared. His face was a mask of cold fury. His tattoo gleamed in the strobing muzzle flashes. His eyes found hers across the chaos. Zara? But it was too late. Because someone was already behind her. An arm wrapped around her throat. A gun pressed against her temple. Don't move, the voice hissed in her ear. Or she dies. Everything stopped. Kang Jun froze. His men froze. Even Kim stopped moving. And in that suspended moment, Zara finally saw who was holding her. Young-ho. The traitor. The man June had trusted more than anyone. The man who had just sold them both out. I'm sorry, Young-ho said quietly. But you were never meant to survive this. He pulled the trigger. And the world went black. The bullet never reached her. In the fraction of a second between Young-ho's finger tightening on the trigger and the firing pin striking the cartridge, Kang Jun moved. Not like a businessman. Not like a CEO. Like something forged in violence and sharpened by 15 years of survival in a world where hesitation meant death. His body slammed into Young-ho's from the side, driving the gun upward just as it fired. The shot cracked through the warehouse ceiling, sending a shower of rust and debris raining down like metallic snow. Zara hit the concrete floor. Art. The impact drove the air from her lungs. Stars exploded across her vision. Sound became distant, muffled, as if the world had been submerged in water. But she was alive. She was alive. Above her, chaos resumed. Kang Jun and Young-ho grappled on the ground, the gun between them, their bodies locked in a struggle that was primal and desperate and terrifyingly quiet. Neither man spoke. Neither man screamed. They fought in silence like wolves, all breath and muscle and lethal intent. Around them, Kang Jun's men engaged Kim's forces. The warehouse erupted into controlled violence. Professional. Efficient. The kind of combat that happened between trained operatives, not street thugs. Zara pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering, her eyes fixed on the two men fighting for the gun. She watched Kang Jun take an elbow to the jaw. She watched him absorb the blow without flinching. She watched him use the momentum to twist Young-ho's wrist at an angle that shouldn't have been possible. The gun clattered across the concrete. Kang Jun pinned his former second-in-command to the floor with one hand around his throat. For a long moment, neither man moved. 15 years, Kang Jun said quietly. His voice was steady despite the blood dripping from a cut above his eye. I trusted you for 15 years. Young-ho's face was purple. His hands clawed uselessly at Kang Jun's grip. Why? The word was soft. Almost gentle. Almost sad. Young-ho's lips moved. Kang Jun eased his grip just enough to allow speech. Because. Young-ho gasped. Because you were never going to choose me. Confusion flickered across Kang Jun's face. Choose you? I built your empire beside you. Young-ho's voice was raw. Broken. Every decision. Every sacrifice. Every night when the blood was still wet on our hands, I was there. I was always there. His eyes, wild, desperate, burning, shifted to Zara. And then she appears. Some nobody interpreter. And suddenly I'm invisible. Suddenly everything I've done means nothing. Understanding dawned on Kang Jun's face. Followed immediately by something that looked like grief. Young-ho. Don't. The word came out strangled. Don't pretend you ever cared. Don't pretend I was anything more than a tool. You were my brother. The words fell between them like stones into deep water. Young-ho's expression crumbled. Then why wasn't that enough? Silence. Around them the fighting had stopped. Kim's men were subdued, kneeling on the concrete with their hands behind their heads, surrounded by Kang Jun's operatives. Prosecutor Kim himself stood frozen near the warehouse entrance, watching the scene unfold with an expression that had shifted from triumph to terror as he realized just how badly he had miscalculated. Kang Jun released Young-ho's throat. He stood slowly. Looked down at the man who had been his closest ally for half his life. Take him, he said quietly to his men. Don't hurt him. Sir. I said don't hurt him. The operatives exchanged glances but obeyed. As they lifted Young-ho from the ground, the broken man looked at Kang Jun one final time. She'll destroy you, he whispered. Love always destroys men like us. Kang Jun said nothing. He simply turned away and walked toward Zara. Later that morning in the back of an armored vehicle, Zara finally broke. Not slowly. Not gracefully. The tears came in waves, ugly, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. The accumulated terror of the past hours, the kidnapping, the gun, the shot, the fighting, crashed over her like a tsunami that had been held back by nothing but willpower. And willpower had finally failed. Kang Jun held her. He didn't speak. He didn't try to comfort her with words, because words were insufficient for what she had survived. He simply wrapped his arms around her and held her against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, his body warm and solid and real. She cried until there was nothing left. Until the tears dried and the sobs faded and all that remained was the sound of his breathing and the distant hum of the engine. I thought you were dead, she whispered finally. The note said they had you. I thought. I know. I would have done anything. Given them anything. I would have. I know. His arms tightened. That's why they used you. Because they understood something I was too blind to see. She pulled back enough to look at his face. The cut above his eye was still bleeding. His jaw was bruised. His shirt was torn, revealing the edge of his tattoo where the dragon's tail curled across his collarbone, dark ink against damaged skin. What did they understand? She asked. His dark eyes held hers. That you are the only thing in this world I cannot lose. Several days later, Prosecutor Kim sat in the same interrogation room where he had once questioned Zara. But this time he was on the other side of the table. And this time the questions weren't coming from him. Chief Prosecutor Park, Kim's superior, sat across from him, flanked by two investigators from the Internal Affairs Division. Their expressions were severe. Their files were thick. Fabricating evidence, Park said, reading from the file without looking up. Witness intimidation. Unlawful detention. Conspiracy to commit kidnapping. He turned a page. Shall I continue? Kim's face was ashen. I can explain. Explain what? That you manufactured charges against an innocent woman to pursue a personal vendetta against Kang Jun. Park finally looked up. That you colluded with a criminal informant to orchestrate a kidnapping? The chairman is guilty. Of what? Your investigation produced no credible evidence. Every document you submitted has been reviewed and found to be either fabricated, improperly obtained, or irrelevant. Park closed the file. You didn't build a case against Kang Jun. You built a case against yourself. Kim's mouth opened. Close. Prosecutor Kim Tae-won, Park said formally. You are hereby suspended pending a full internal investigation. Your cases will be reassigned. Your access to all systems and facilities is revoked immediately. This is a mistake. The only mistake was yours. Park stood. Guards, please escort Mr. Kim from the building. As they led him away, Kim's eyes burned with impotent fury. This wasn't over. It couldn't be over. But deep down, in the part of himself he refused to acknowledge, he knew the truth. He had lost. Across the city, in a private hospital room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite, Zara was being examined by the best medical team money could buy. Kang Jun had insisted. She had protested. He had insisted harder. I don't need. You were held at gunpoint, thrown to the ground, and subjected to extreme psychological trauma. His voice was calm but left no room for argument. You're seeing the doctor. I'm fine. That wasn't a request. She stared at him. He stared back. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes, something fierce and tender and absolutely immovable, told her this was a battle she wouldn't win. Fine, she said. But only because I'm tired of arguing with you. That's a valid reason. She thought she saw the ghost of a smile cross his face. But it vanished before she could be sure. Hours later, the doctor declared her physically unharmed. Minor bruising from the fall, she reported to Kang Jun, who had waited outside the room like a sentinel. No concussion. No internal injuries. She's remarkably resilient. I could have told you that, he said quietly. The doctor smiled. I'd recommend rest. And perhaps. She glanced toward the door. Someone to talk to. What she experienced was traumatic. The psychological impact may take time to surface. She'll have whatever she needs. Of course, Chairman. After the doctor left, Kang Jun stood outside Zara's door for a long moment. His hand rested on the handle. His forehead pressed against the cool wood. He closed his eyes. The image of Young-ho's gun against her temple played behind his eyelids like a film he couldn't stop. The sound of the shot. The way she'd fallen. The eternity between the trigger pull and the moment he'd reached them. He had almost lost her. Not abstractly. Not theoretically. He had watched someone press a gun to her head and pull the trigger. And in that moment, in that infinite, suspended fraction of a second, he had understood something with perfect clarity. He would burn the world to ashes for this woman. Every empire he had built. Every alliance he had forged. Every throne he occupied in the shadows. He would sacrifice all of it. For her. That knowledge terrified him more than any enemy ever had. The following morning they talked. Not about the kidnapping. Not about the prosecution. Not about Young-ho's betrayal or the war that was still quietly raging in the underworld. They talked about themselves. Kang Jun sat in a chair by her hospital bed. He had changed into clean clothes, another impeccable black suit, another black shirt, but the bruise on his jaw remained, a purple reminder of what he'd done to save her. You asked me once why I care, he said quietly. About you. About what happened in the lobby. Zara nodded. I always said I didn't know. He paused. That wasn't entirely true. She waited. When I was 19 I fell in love. The word seemed to cost him something. Her name was Yoon Seo-yeon. She was beautiful, smart, kind. Everything I thought I wanted. His gaze drifted to the window. I trusted her completely. Told her things no one should know. Showed her parts of myself I'd hidden from everyone else. What happened? She sold me out. His voice was flat. Empty. To a rival organization. Everything I'd told her, every secret, every vulnerability, every weakness, she traded for money and protection. Zara's heart clenched. 3 of my men died because of what she revealed. Good men. Men who trusted me to keep them safe. He swallowed. I barely survived myself. June? After that, I decided that love was a liability. A weapon that others could use against you. He turned back to face her. I built walls. Higher and thicker and more impenetrable than anything in this world. I convinced myself that trust was foolishness. That caring about someone was the most dangerous thing a man in my position could do. And then you stood in my lobby with coffee dripping down your blouse. Something shifted in his expression. Something that looked like wonder. And you refused to break. Silence. I recognized something in you, he said softly. The same thing I see in the mirror every morning. The marks of someone who has survived things that should have destroyed them. But you're afraid, she whispered. Terrified. He reached for her hand. Because Young-ho was right about one thing. What? Love destroys men like me. His fingers intertwined with hers. But I'm starting to think that destruction might be the only thing that can save me. Meanwhile, in a detention facility on the outskirts of Seoul, Young-ho sat alone. The cell was clean but spare. A bed. A toilet. A small window that offered a view of concrete and sky. He stared at his hands. The same hands that had held a gun to Zara's head. The same hands that had helped build an empire. The same hands that had destroyed everything in one act of desperate, jealous fury. A guard appeared at his cell door. "You have a visitor." Young-ho looked up. He expected a lawyer. Or perhaps one of the organization's representatives, come to deliver judgment. Instead, Kang Jun stood in the doorway. Alone. Without guards. Without protection. Just a man visiting the brother who had tried to kill the woman he loved. "Leave us," Kang Jun told the guard. "Sir, I can't." "Leave us." The guard left. The cell door closed. For a long moment, the two men simply looked at each other. "Are you here to kill me?" Young-ho asked. His voice held no fear. Only exhaustion. "No." "Then why?" Kang Jun sat on the opposite end of the bed. "Because I owe you the truth." Young-ho waited. "You were never invisible to me," Kang Jun said quietly. 15 years. Every night when the blood was wet on our hands, I remember every one. You were the only person I trusted. The only person who made this life bearable." Young-ho's jaw tightened. "But I couldn't give you what you wanted," Kang Jun continued. "Not because you didn't matter. But because I was broken. Completely, irreparably broken. After Seo-yeon, I couldn't let anyone close. Not even you. And yet you let her close." The bitterness in Young-ho's voice was thick enough to cut. "This interpreter. This woman you've known for weeks. You gave her what I spent 15 years earning." "Yes." "Why?" Kang Jun was quiet for a long time. "Because she didn't ask for it," he said finally. "You fought for my trust. You demanded it. You earned it through loyalty and sacrifice and blood. And all of that should have been enough. But it wasn't. No. Because I'm not a man who responds to force. Not even the force of devotion." He turned to face his former brother. "She never asked me for anything. She never demanded trust. She simply existed. Quietly. Honestly. Without any desire to change me or own me or claim what I could offer. And that was enough? That was everything." Silence settled between them. Heavy with grief. Heavy with truth. "What happens to me now?" Young-ho asked. "That depends on you." Kang Jun stood. "You can spend the rest of your life in this cell, consumed by bitterness and regret. Or you can choose to heal. You're not going to punish me? You almost killed the woman I love." Something dark moved through Kang Jun's eyes. "You betrayed every oath you ever swore to me. You put my entire organization at risk." He moved toward the door. "But you were also the only person who stood beside me when the world was trying to put me in the ground. And I don't forget that. Even when I should." He knocked on the cell door. It opened. "I've arranged for your sentence to be reduced," he said without turning around. "You'll serve 2 years. After that, you'll be given new documentation. A new life. Far from Seoul. And if I come back?" Kang Jun paused. "Don't." He left. The door closed behind him. And Young-ho, for the first time since the warehouse, wept. The weeks that followed were strange. Not bad. Not good. Strange. Like learning to walk again after a terrible fall. Zara returned to her apartment, but it no longer felt the same. The modest space that had once been her sanctuary now felt exposed. Vulnerable. Every shadow held the memory of men with guns. Every knock at the door sent her heart racing. Kang Jun wanted her to move. "I have properties," he said. "Safe. Secured. Places where no one could reach you." "I'm not moving into one of your luxury apartments," she said firmly. "I'm not that person." "What person?" "The kind of woman who lets a powerful man solve all her problems with money." Something that might have been admiration flickered in his expression. "Then let me at least improve your security. My door has a lock. Your door has a lock that a determined child could break. I'm talking about proper security. Cameras. Reinforced entry points. A dedicated response team within 2 minutes." She stared at him. "For a 1-bedroom apartment in Mapogu? For the home of the woman I love." The words hit her like sunlight after rain. He said them so simply. So matter-of-factly. As if loving her were as natural as breathing. She looked away before he could see her eyes glistening. "Fine," she whispered. "But nothing ridiculous." He nodded. Within 3 days, her apartment had security systems that would have made a foreign embassy jealous. It was, she thought, slightly ridiculous. But she didn't say anything. Because every camera and sensor and reinforced lock was a love letter in his language. The language of a man who showed devotion through protection rather than poetry. Later that afternoon they walked along the Han River. It was the first time they had been in public together. Openly, deliberately, without the pretense of business or the cover of emergency. Just two people walking beside a river. Kang Jun wore his usual black, but he had left the suit jacket behind. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms, revealing the elaborate tattoo in full daylight for the first time. Zara watched passers-by notice it. Watched their eyes widen. Watched them look away quickly. "Does it bother you?" she asked. "What?" "The way people look at you. The fear." He considered the question. "It used to comfort me. Fear meant safety. If people were afraid of me, they couldn't hurt me. And now. He looked down at the ink crawling across his skin. The dragon coiled around his forearm. The tiger's eyes staring from beneath his rolled sleeve. The red spider lilies blooming across the back of his hand. "Now I wonder what it would feel like to be seen without being feared." "I see you," she said softly. "And I'm not afraid." He looked at her. For a long moment, his expression was completely unguarded, raw and open and devastatingly vulnerable. Then his hand found hers. Their fingers intertwined. And they walked together beside the water, two people who had survived the worst the world could throw at them, learning for the first time what it felt like to not be alone. 3 weeks after the warehouse incident, a new player entered the game. His name was Alexander Chin. 41. Chinese-Canadian. CEO of Pacific Meridian Holdings, one of Asia's fastest-growing investment firms. He was handsome in the polished way of men who spent too much money on their appearance. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect smile that never quite reached his eyes. He arrived in Seoul for the Park and Morrison merger negotiations, which had resumed after the chaos of the previous weeks. And from the moment he laid eyes on Zara, everything changed. "Miss Okonkwo." He took her hand during the introduction, holding it a beat too long. "I've heard extraordinary things about your work." "Thank you, Mr. Chin." "Alexander, please." That perfect smile. "I believe we'll be working closely together on this merger." "I'm just the interpreter." "Somehow I doubt that very much." From across the conference room, Kang Jun watched. His expression was perfectly controlled. His eyes were not. Several days later, Alexander Chin made his move. He began with professional courtesy, requesting Zara for private translation sessions, insisting she attend business dinners, praising her work in front of the entire merger team. Then the courtesy became something else. Personal compliments delivered with calculated warmth. Lingering touches disguised as professional gestures. Invitations to events that had nothing to do with business. "He's testing you," Kang Jun said one evening, standing at his office window, his back to the room. "Testing us." "He's just being friendly," Zara said from the couch where she was reviewing documents. "Some people are naturally." "He touched your shoulder 4 times during today's meeting." Kang Jun's voice was quiet. Controlled. "Barely." "He held your gaze for an average of 6 seconds per interaction." "He positioned himself between you and the nearest exit during the break." Zara lowered her papers. "You were counting?" "I noticed things." "That's not noticing. That's surveillance." He turned from the window. The light caught the sharp edge of his jaw, the dark intensity of his eyes, the faintest hint of ink at his collar. "Would you prefer I didn't notice?" Something in his voice made her heart stumble. "Are you jealous?" He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was very quiet. "I have spent my entire adult life controlling every emotion I feel. Fear, anger, grief. I have mastered them all." He took a breath. "But watching another man look at you the way I look at you." He stopped. "What?" she whispered. "I have no control over that." His dark eyes held hers. "None. And it terrifies me." The confession hung in the air. Zara set down her papers. She crossed the room to where he stood. She placed both hands on his chest. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "Alexander Chin could offer me the world. He could offer me safety and simplicity and a life without fear. I know. And I would refuse every bit of it." Her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. "Because the world means nothing if you're not in it." His hands came up to cover hers. "You're making it very difficult to maintain my composure," he murmured. "Good." She rose onto her toes. "Your composure is overrated." She kissed him. And for once, the silent chairman had absolutely nothing to say. But Alexander Chin was not merely a rival in love. He was something far more dangerous. The truth emerged slowly in fragments, like a broken mirror reassembling itself. Kang Jun's intelligence team uncovered it piece by piece. Pacific Meridian Holdings was a front. Behind the legitimate business operations lay a sprawling network of money laundering, arms dealing, and human trafficking that spanned 3 continents. And Alexander Chen was its architect. He's not here for the merger, Kang Jun's new second-in-command, a sharp woman named Han Soo-min who had risen through the ranks with cold efficiency, reported during a late-night briefing. He's here for you. Explain. Our sources indicate that Chen has been planning to expand into Korea for over 2 years. Your organization is the only thing standing in his way. Soo-min pulled up a series of documents on the screen. He's been acquiring allies, bribing officials, building an infrastructure. And Zara? Soo-min hesitated. Speak freely. We believe his interest in Miss Okonkwo serves 2 purposes. She changed the slide. First, to provoke you. To force you into an emotional mistake that he can exploit. And second, to acquire leverage. If he can isolate her, turn her against you, or simply take her, he gains a weapon that your organization has no defense against. Silence. Kang Jun sat motionless for a long time. The room waited. Double her security, he said finally. Quietly. She's not to know about any of this. Sir, with respect, don't you think she deserves to know? If she knows, she'll try to handle it herself. His jaw tightened. She'll refuse protection. She'll confront Chen directly. She'll put herself in danger because she believes she can face anything alone. Can't she? She can face anything. His voice was soft. That's exactly what makes her vulnerable. Hours later, Kang Jun found himself in the private chamber beneath his building. The space had been redesigned since Young-ho's betrayal. New security. New faces. New protocols. But the atmosphere remained the same. The weight of shadows, the hum of hidden power, the scent of expensive wood and old secrets. He sat alone at the head of the long table. Around him, empty chairs. He thought about what Soo-min had said. About Chen. About leverage. About weapons. He looked down at his hands. The tattoo spread across his left hand like a declaration. Dark ink spelling out a history of violence and power and sacrifice. The red spider lilies bloomed between his knuckles. Death and undying love. He had always understood the death part. The love part was new. What are you doing? He whispered to the empty room. What are you becoming? No answer came. Only the silence that had been his companion for 15 years. But the silence felt different now. Lonelier. Because he had tasted something better. Alexander Chen invited Zara to dinner on a Thursday. He did it publicly in front of the entire merger team, during a coffee break in the Hanul Tower conference room. Miss Okonkwo, I'd love to discuss some translation nuances over dinner tonight. My treat, of course. I know a wonderful restaurant in Itaewon. Every head in the room turned, including Kang Jun's. Zara felt the weight of his gaze from across the room. Felt it like a physical pressure against her skin. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Chen, she said smoothly. But I have prior commitments this evening. Tomorrow then? I'm afraid my schedule is quite full for the foreseeable future. Chen's smile didn't waver, but something cold shifted behind his eyes. Of course. Perhaps another time. He retreated with practiced grace. But as he passed Kang Jun's chair, something passed between the 2 men, a look that lasted less than a second but contained volumes. Recognition. Challenge. Or. The following morning, Zara found flowers outside her apartment door. Not from Kang Jun. The bouquet was enormous, 24 white roses wrapped in silk, accompanied by a handwritten card. Beauty like yours deserves to be celebrated. She stared at the flowers for a long time. Then she called Kang Jun. He sent me flowers. Silence on the other end. June? What kind? White roses. More silence. I'm sending a car. You don't need to. I'm sending a car, Zara. Something in his voice made her stop arguing. 20 minutes later, she was in his office. He stood at the window, his posture rigid, his hands clasped behind his back. The afternoon light fell across his profile, illuminating the sharp angles of his face and the tension in his jaw. Sit down, he said. I'd rather stand. He turned to face her. Chen isn't who he claims to be. Her eyes narrowed. What do you mean? His company is a front for criminal operations spanning 3 continents. He deals in arms, money laundering, and worse. Kang Jun's voice was flat. Clinical. His interest in you is not romantic. It's strategic. Strategic? He wants to use you against me. Either by winning your trust and turning you into an asset, or by taking you entirely and using you as leverage. The words settled over her like ice water. How long have you known this? Several days. And you didn't tell me? I was trying to protect you. By keeping me in the dark? Her voice sharpened. By deciding what I can and cannot handle? Zara? No. She stepped forward, her soft eyes blazing with a fire he had never seen before. You don't get to do this. You don't get to decide what I know and what I don't. You don't get to wrap me in cotton wool and pretend it's love. I was afraid. Of what? Of losing you. The words cracked open something raw in his voice. Not to Chin. To yourself. If I told you the truth, I knew you would try to handle it alone. You would refuse protection. You would walk straight into danger because you've spent your entire life believing that you have to face everything by yourself. She stared at him. And I couldn't bear it, he whispered. The thought of you in danger again. After the warehouse. After the gun. After... His voice broke. Actually broke. The silent chairman, the man who controlled empires with a whisper, who commanded fear with a glance, stood before her with tears in his eyes and a crack in his armor that ran all the way to his soul. I can't lose you, he said. Do you understand? I physically cannot survive losing you. It would end me. Not the organization. Not the empire. Me. Zara's anger drained away like water from cupped hands. She crossed the remaining distance between them. She took his face in her hands. Then stop trying to protect me alone, she said softly. Let me stand beside you. Let me fight with you. Not behind you. Not beneath you. With you. He closed his eyes. Together? Together. He exhaled. Long shuddering. Like a man releasing a weight he'd carried for years. Together, he repeated. They set the trap together. It took 2 weeks to plan. Zara insisted on being involved in every detail and Kang Jun, against every protective instinct in his body, agreed. Because she had asked. Because she was right. Because together was the only way forward. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Zara would accept Alexander Chen's dinner invitation. She would wear a wire. She would draw him into conversation about his true operations. And Kang Jun's team would record everything. Absolutely not, Kang Jun said when she first proposed it. You agreed to include me. Including you doesn't mean using you as bait. It's not bait. It's strategy. She held his gaze without flinching. Chin wants me close. He thinks I'm his path to you. Let him believe that. Let him talk. And let me end this. If something goes wrong, then your team will be there. You will be there. She placed her hand over his. Trust me. The way I trust you. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, very quietly, you are the most terrifying person I have ever met. Is that a yes? God help me. Yes. The dinner took place at an exclusive restaurant in Gangnam. Private room. Soft lighting. Wine that cost more per bottle than Zara earned in a week. Alexander Chin was at his most charming. He pulled out her chair. He ordered for the table with practiced sophistication. He told stories about his travels that were designed to impress and disarm. And underneath it all, Zara caught glimpses of the predator. Small things. The way his eyes tracked the room's exits. The way his smile hardened when she mentioned Kang Jun's name. The way his questions, seemingly casual, probed for information with surgical precision. You and Chairman Kang seem close, he said, swirling his wine. How long have you known each other? Not long, Zara said carefully. He's been very supportive of the merger process. Supportive. Chen's smile widened. Is that what they're calling it these days? Mr. Chen? Alexander. Mr. Chen. She held his gaze. If you have something to say, I'd appreciate directness. Something shifted in his expression. The charm cracked. Just for a moment. Beneath it she saw calculation. Cold, precise, inhuman. Very well. He set down his wine. I'll be direct. Kang Jun is not who you think he is. The investment firm is a front. His real business is what? Chin studied her for a long moment. Evaluating. Deciding. Let's just say that the man you're sleeping with has blood on his hands. He leaned forward. Quite a lot of it, actually. Those are serious accusations. They're not accusations. They're facts. His voice dropped. I have evidence. Documentation. Witnesses. Enough to put him away for the rest of his life. Then why haven't you gone to the authorities? Because authorities are. He waved a hand. Unreliable. Corruptible. Slow. Then what do you want? I want what any businessman wants. His eyes locked onto hers. Partnership. Expansion. Access to markets that are currently blocked. Blocked by whom? He smiled. Who do you think? The wire captured every word. In a van 3 blocks away, Kang Jun listened with Soo-min and a team of operatives. His hands were clenched so tightly that the tattooed skin across his knuckles had gone white. She's doing well, Soo-min said quietly. He didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the audio feed. His heart was in the room with Zara. The dinner continued. Chin, believing he had found a sympathetic audience, began to reveal more than he intended. He talked about his operations in Southeast Asia, about the officials he controlled, about the shipments that moved through ports under false documentation. He talked about his plans for Korea, about the organization he intended to build, about the man he intended to replace. Kang Jun's time is over, he said, pouring more wine. He's become soft, distracted, emotional. His eyes swept over Zara with unmistakable meaning. And emotional men make mistakes. Is that what you're counting on? That's what I'm ensuring. He leaned closer. I'm offering you a choice, Zara. Stay with a man whose empire is crumbling. Or join one whose empire is just beginning. And if I refuse? Something dark flickered across his face. I don't typically accept refusal. The threat was quiet. But it was there. Clear as a blade. In the van, Kang Jun stood. Get her out. Sir, we need more. Get her out. Now. Soo-min spoke into her calm, all units, extraction protocol. Go. 30 seconds later, the restaurant's fire alarm erupted. Staff rushed to evacuate. In the chaos, a woman in black appeared at Zara's elbow. Time to go, Miss Okonkwo. Zara glanced at Chin. He was already moving toward the exit, his charming facade reassembling itself with practiced speed. But his eyes, cold, furious, calculating, found hers through the crowd. And in them she saw the truth. This wasn't over. The evidence from the dinner recording was devastating. Within 48 hours, Kang Jun's legal team, the legitimate one, had compiled a dossier that could bury Alexander Chen's entire operation. But Chen moved first. The attack came at 3 in the morning. Not against Kang Jun. Against his business. Simultaneously, across 3 continents, financial institutions that handled Hanul Group's legitimate transactions were targeted. Accounts frozen. Transfers blocked. Regulatory complaints filed in 7 jurisdictions. It was warfare. Corporate, elegant, and utterly ruthless. He's trying to strangle us financially, Soo-min reported during an emergency meeting in the underground chamber. Cut off our legitimate revenue streams and force us to expose our other operations to compensate. Around the table, faces were grim. How long can we sustain this? Someone asked. Weeks, not months, Soo-min replied. Unless we counterattack. All eyes turned to Kang Jun. He sat at the head of the table in perfect stillness. His suit was immaculate. His expression revealed nothing. His hands rested on the table's surface, the tattooed left hand catching the dim light, the dragon coiling, the tiger watching, the spider lilies blooming in eternal red. Counterattack, he said quietly. Sir? Everything we have on Chin. Financial records. Operational details. The dinner recording. His voice was calm. Almost serene. Release it all. Soo-min blinked. To whom? Everyone. His dark eyes swept the room. Every regulatory body. Every law enforcement agency. Every media outlet. Every government that has jurisdiction over his operations. Sir, that could expose? Our legitimate operations? Yes. He stood. But our legitimate operations can withstand scrutiny. Chen's cannot. And our other operations? Are invisible. They've always been invisible. That's why I built them that way. Silence. Then, slowly, nods around the table. When? Soo-min asked. Kang Jun checked his watch. Now. The following morning, Alexander Chen woke to find his world on fire. Every major financial publication carried the story. Regulatory agencies across 12 countries announced simultaneous investigations. His assets were frozen. His accounts were seized. His carefully constructed empire, years of planning, billions of dollars, countless crimes hidden behind a perfect smile, collapsed in a matter of hours. He sat in his hotel room, staring at his phone as alert after alert destroyed everything he had built. And he understood. The silent chairman had not fought back with violence. He had fought back with the truth. And the truth was far more devastating than any bullet. Hours later, Korean authorities arrested Alexander Chen at Incheon International Airport as he attempted to flee the country. The charges were extensive. The evidence was overwhelming. The outcome was inevitable. As they led him away in handcuffs, Chen looked into the crowd of reporters and cameras and found, standing quietly at the back, a tall Korean man in a black suit. Watching. Silent. Victorious. Their eyes met. Chen's face twisted with hatred. Kang Jun's expression didn't change. He simply turned and walked away. With Chen's arrest, the final threat was neutralized. The merger proceeded successfully, bringing unprecedented growth to Hanul Group and cementing its position as a global powerhouse. Prosecutor Kim's investigation was officially closed, his methods discredited, his career destroyed by his own malfeasance. Young-ho began serving his sentence in quiet dignity, sending monthly letters to Kang Jun that went unanswered but were always read. And Zara began to breathe again. For the first time in months, she woke without fear. Without the weight of conspiracy and danger pressing against her chest. Without wondering whether today would bring another kidnapping, another threat, another gun against her temple. She went back to work. She translated documents and facilitated meetings and did the job she had spent years building the skills to do. But something was different. She was different. The woman who had walked into Hanul Tower months ago, the one with the spotless white blouse and the carefully maintained armor, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger. Someone who had looked into the darkness and refused to look away. Someone who had chosen love over safety and found that love was the safest place she'd ever been. Several days later, Kang Jun asked her to meet him. Not at the office. Not at the safe house. At the building where it all began. Hanul Tower. The lobby. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Why? She asked over the phone. Because I want to show you something. What? Please just come. She came. The lobby looked exactly as it had on the day her life changed. Marble floors gleaming. Crystal chandeliers sparkling. The scent of espresso drifting from the cafe station in the corner. Zara stood in the center of the space wearing a white blouse. A new one. She didn't know why she had chosen it. Perhaps some instinct for symmetry. Some desire to reclaim what had been taken from her in this exact spot. She waited. The lobby hummed with its usual activity. Executives moving with purpose. Receptionists fielding calls. Security guards standing at their posts. Then the elevator chimed. The doors opened. And Kang Jun stepped out. He was wearing a black suit. Of course he was. But something was different. His collar was open wider than usual, revealing the elaborate tattoo where it climbed the side of his neck, the dragon's head emerging from beneath expensive fabric, the storm clouds swirling around dark ink, the spider lilies blooming against his skin. He had never displayed it so openly in public. Never. And everyone noticed. Conversations died. Movement stopped. The lobby fell into the same frozen silence that had accompanied his first appearance in this space. But this time the silence held something different. Not fear. Because the silent chairman was walking across the marble floor with his armor deliberately lowered. His walls intentionally breached. His heart on deliberate display. Walking toward the only person who had ever made him want to be vulnerable. Walking toward Zara. She watched him approach. Each step deliberate. Each movement carrying the weight of everything they had survived. Coffee and cruelty. Silence and suspicion. Betrayal and bullets. War and wounds. All of it leading to this moment. This lobby. This man. This choice. He stopped before her. Close enough to touch. Close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. Close enough to see the emotion breaking through his carefully controlled expression like light through cracked ice. Zara. Her name and his voice had always sounded different. Like a prayer spoken by someone who had forgotten how to believe. June. Around them the lobby watched. Every executive. Every receptionist. Every security guard. Every person who had witnessed her humiliation months ago now witnessed something else entirely. Something extraordinary. I brought you here because this is where it started, he said. His voice was quiet but carried across the marble with crystalline clarity. This is where I saw you for the first time. Standing in the middle of the worst moment of your life, refusing to break. He reached into his jacket. I've spent 32 years building walls. 15 years building an empire. My entire adult life convincing myself that power was the only thing worth having. His hand emerged holding a small black box. The lobby collectively stopped breathing. I was wrong. He opened the box. Inside a ring. Simple. Elegant. A single stone that caught the chandelier light and scattered it into rainbows across the marble floor. You are worth more than every empire I have ever built or ever will build. You are worth more than power. More than fear. More than the name they whisper in shadows. His dark eyes glistened. The silent chairman, the man who never showed emotion, was crying. I am asking you, in this lobby where a cruel man tried to destroy you, to let me spend the rest of my life proving that the world contains more kindness than cruelty, more love than hatred, more light than shadow. He sank to one knee. The marble was cold beneath him. He didn't notice. Marry me, Zara? His voice was barely a whisper now. Not because I can protect you. Not because I can give you everything. But because without you, everything I have means nothing. Silence. Perfect, crystalline silence. Every eye in the lobby fixed on the woman in the white blouse. Zara looked down at the man kneeling before her. This impossible, terrifying, beautiful man. This man who had ended careers with a whisper and empires with a signature. This man who was kneeling on cold marble with tears on his face, asking the only question that had ever truly mattered. She felt her own tears falling. She didn't try to stop them. Yes. The word was quiet, but it echoed off every marble surface in the lobby. Yes, she said again louder. And then she was in his arms. And he was kissing her. And the lobby, that vast, cold, impersonal space, erupted. Not in polite applause. In genuine, unrestrained, joyful noise. People who had never spoken to either of them were cheering. Receptionists were crying. A security guard was clapping with a ferocity that suggested he might injure himself. But Zara didn't hear any of it. All she heard was the heartbeat of the man holding her. Steady. Strong. Finally, beautifully hers. They married 3 months later. The ceremony was small, deliberately, intentionally small. A garden overlooking the Han River. 30 guests. Zara's closest colleagues. Kang Jun's most trusted associates. Soo-min, who served as both security coordinator and maid of honor with equal competence. Zara wore white. Of course she did. A flowing gown that moved like water. Minimal jewelry. Minimal makeup. Her natural beauty, the quiet elegance that had captivated a silent chairman across a crowded lobby, shining with unadorned grace. Kang Jun wore black. Of course he did. But his jacket was open. His collar was loose. The tattoo that climbed his neck and wrapped his hand was fully, unapologetically visible. Because he had nothing left to hide. Not from her. Not from the world. Not from himself. They wrote their own vows. Zara went first. I fell in love with a man who speaks in silences, she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. A man who shows love through protection rather than poetry. A man who saw me standing in a ruined blouse with coffee on my documents and decided I was worth fighting for. She squeezed his hands. I don't need your power. I don't need your empire. I don't need anything you could buy or build or command. I just need you. The real you. The man behind the silence. The man who is terrified and brilliant and broken and beautiful. She smiled through her tears. I choose you. Today. Tomorrow. Every day after that. Until the stars burn out and the world forgets our names. His jaw tightened. His eyes glistened. Then he spoke. I have lived in darkness for most of my life, he said quietly. I chose it. Cultivated it. Made it my armor and my weapon and my home. He lifted her hand to his lips. And then you appeared. And the darkness became unbearable. Not because you forced light upon me. But because you showed me what I was missing. His voice cracked. He didn't try to fix it. You are the bravest person I have ever known. Not because you face danger without fear. I've seen you afraid. I've seen you shake. I've seen you cry. But you never, not once, let that fear stop you from standing. He pressed his forehead against hers. I spent 32 years believing love was a weapon that could be used against me. You taught me that love is not a weapon. It is a shield. And I would rather stand behind your shield than behind every wall I have ever built. He pulled back. I choose you, Zara. Over power. Over empire. Over every shadow that has ever claimed me. I choose you. And I will keep choosing you. Until there are no more choices left to make. Silence. Then, softly, the officiant spoke. By the authority vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. He kissed her. Gently. Tenderly. Like she was everything sacred in a world that had forgotten what sacred meant. Rain hammered against the towering glass facade of Hanol Tower. Inside the marble lobby, a woman in a white blouse strode through the revolving doors with quiet confidence. But this time, no one mistook her for a delivery girl. This time, every person in the lobby knew exactly who she was. Zara Kang. Wife of Chairman Kang Jun. Director of International Relations at Hanul Group, a position she had earned through intelligence and hard work, not through her husband's name. She nodded to the receptionist, who beamed. She smiled at the security guard, who bowed. She walked toward the elevator with the easy grace of a woman who belonged. Because she did. She had always belonged. It had just taken the world a little while to notice. 47 floors above, Kang Jun stood at his office window watching the lobby feed. He watched his wife cross the marble floor. He watched the way people greeted her, with respect born of admiration, not fear. He watched the way she moved through a space that had once been the site of her greatest humiliation. And he smiled. Not the ghost of a smile. Not the barely perceptible twitch that passed for emotion in his carefully controlled world. A real smile. Full and warm and private and meant for no one but himself. His phone buzzed. A message from Zara. Stop watching me on the security cameras. Creepy. He almost laughed. Almost. I wasn't watching you. Liar. I can feel your eyes from 47 floors up. He leaned back in his chair. Looked at his left hand. The tattoo spread across his skin as it always had, dragons and tigers and storm clouds and spider lilies. The marks of a life lived in shadows. But on his ring finger, a new addition. A simple gold band. The only mark that had ever truly mattered. His phone buzzed again. Come down. I want to have coffee with my husband. He stood. He straightened his jacket. He walked toward the elevator. And as the doors closed behind him, he thought about coffee. About a ruined white blouse and scattered documents. About an elevator door opening at exactly the right moment. About the woman who had stood in the ruins of her own humiliation and refused to break. About the man who had watched her from across a marble lobby and felt something crack open in his chest for the first time in 15 years. About the love that had grown from that single crack. Slowly, painfully, beautifully, until it filled every empty space in both their lives. The elevator descended. The doors opened. And there she was, standing in the lobby, holding 2 cups of coffee, smiling. He walked toward her. She handed him a cup. Their fingers brushed. You know, she said, the last time someone spilled coffee in this lobby, it didn't end well for them. As I recall, he murmured, it ended rather well for me. She laughed. The sound echoed off marble walls. And for a moment, just a moment, the most powerful man in Seoul's underworld forgot about empires and enemies and the weight of his many crowns. For a moment he was just a man, standing in a lobby, drinking coffee with the woman he loved. And that was enough. That was everything. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic stories. Leave a comment telling us your favorite moment. We read every single one. Until next time, remember, sometimes one act of cruelty changes every life forever. But sometimes one act of love changes them even more.